At the picnic table, my sister raised her beer and said, "To the ghost who pays for everything but still doesn't belong." My mom snorted. My brother added, "Cheers to background money." I lifted my glass and said, "To background money that just disappeared." Then I took a sip, opened my phone, and hit freeze all accounts. 30 minutes later, my brother was pale, my dad was cursing, and my sister's rent payment bounced mid-toast. That picnic cost them a lot, and they deserved every dollar of it. They thought it was just another family Sunday. Same park we'd always used. Same checker tablecloth my mom insisted on ironing. Same expectations. Marinda will pay. Marinda will clean up. Marinda will be grateful we let her sit at the grown-up table even though she's almost 40. But this one was different. This one was expensive. I made sure of it. They wanted catering this time. Something nicer than hot dogs, Lara said in her group text. Scott voted for ribs and seafood because why not? They'd never pay for it. Lara offered to do the drinks and brought 3 bottles of generic soda and a 6-pack of light beer. My mom called me the night before, asking if I could pick up folding chairs because Dad's back was acting up again. I smiled when she asked. Told her, "Yeah, sure, I'll take care of it." Of course I did. I always do. They know how to take, every single one of them. When my husband packed his things and left with our daughter, they didn't ask how I was doing. They asked if I could still help with Scott's move. When I picked up a second job doing warehouse shifts at night, my mom called to say their dishwasher stopped working. When I didn't answer right away, she texted me 3 times. I sent the money anyway. It's not like I was using it. I wear the same 3 shirts to work every week. I keep a small bag in my truck in case I have to shower at the gym. My Tacoma has a heater that only works when you're going 40 or faster. My boots are so worn the leather is separating at the toe. I don't buy anything, not for me. But I paid off their Kia. I covered the last 3 months of Lara's health insurance because she was between jobs again. I co-signed Scott's lease and paid the deposit even though he makes more than me and works less. So yeah, the picnic cost a lot. I hired a local barbecue truck, told them to add a service charge, gave a generous tip. I rented speakers, coolers, tables, told the rental place to add insurance, even though I knew nothing would break. All of it went on my card, and I didn't say a word. When we got there, everything looked perfect. Scott showed up in sunglasses and a tank top, acting like he was the one who put the whole thing together. Lara posted a photo captioned, "Fam Jam 2025, with 0 mention of who paid. Mom complimented the setup and told me it was so nice to see everyone giving back for once. I just smiled and nodded. Then came the moment. Scott raised his beer like he was proposing a toast at someone's wedding. He looked around like we were all in on some private joke. "To the ghost who pays for everything but still doesn't belong to us." Mom laughed. Lara clinked her cup and said, "To money from the past." And I said, "To the money from the past that just disappeared." I opened my phone under the table and pressed freeze all accounts, joint checking, family Venmo, the card Mom used for groceries, all gone in 5 seconds. I kept eating my ribs, didn't say another word. 30 minutes later, the cracks started showing. Lara tried to order more drinks and her card got declined twice. Scott got a notification from his bank about a failed rent transfer. Dad walked over to me, phone in hand, pretending to be confused. He asked if the bank was down. I told him to try again in the morning. They didn't understand yet. They thought it was some glitch, maybe fraud, something external. No one realized I pulled the plug. Not yet, but they would. This was just the prelude, the first turn of the screw. For once in my life, I wasn't going to be the quiet one. I wasn't going to be the family ATM. I was done playing nice. They thought they were humiliating me. What they didn't know was they had already lost, and I was just getting started. I didn't hear from them that night. Not one message, no thank yous, not even a dumb meme in the group chat. That told me everything. They were scrambling, maybe blaming the bank, maybe refreshing their apps. They probably assumed some fraud alert froze the accounts. I knew Lara would be the first to panic. Half her life runs on monthly subscriptions. Scott was probably too hungover to notice until the rent hit. Mom, though, she'd know. She always knew when something had changed. She just didn't always understand what it meant. By morning, the calls started. Lara texted first. Just, "Hey, did you move some money or something?" Like we were partners in some business deal. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, "My card isn't working. Can you check?" I didn't check. I already knew why. She tried calling twice, straight to voicemail. At work, I sat in the break room sipping burnt coffee while my phone lit up over and over. Dad called, then Scott. Mom left a voicemail that sounded like she was smiling through her teeth. I let it pile up. By noon, Laura emailed me. She never emails, said she was genuinely concerned and asked if I was okay, which was her polite way of saying, "Fix this now." I wrote back one sentence. "The accounts are closed." I didn't elaborate. I didn't owe her one. Scott called next. He didn't bother with small talk. His tone was already climbing. His rent payment got rejected, and the leasing office was threatening to cancel his move-in if he didn't come up with another deposit by Friday. I told him he should have saved some of those beer money selfies for emergencies. He hung up. That afternoon, I went to his new apartment building, the same one I'd co-signed for. I waited in the leasing office while the receptionist called the property manager. I explained calmly that I was pulling my application and stopping the deposit. They said I'd be legally responsible if the lease was finalized. I smiled and told them to check the status. It was still pending. No lease, no commitment. I canceled the check before I left. Scott showed up at my house 2 hours later, knocking like a cop. I didn't answer. He stood out there for maybe 15 minutes pacing, trying to call me from his phone, then from someone else's number. When I finally opened the door, he was already yelling. He said I'd screwed him over, made him look like a joke, and ruined his new start. I leaned against the doorframe and asked him what new start required my money to exist. He kept going, listing everything he thought he was owed, like he was reading from a script. I asked him if he remembered when I asked for help after the divorce, when I couldn't sleep because I was working night shifts and crying in the bathroom at work, when my husband flew our daughter to Mexico and didn't tell me until they landed. He didn't answer. Then I told him to leave. He muttered something on the way to his car, some insult he probably thought would land better. I didn't care. I watched him drive off in the same car I helped him fix last summer. Thursday, I got a voicemail from Dad. He said they'd been talking and maybe it was time to get everything on the table. Said he wanted to work things out like a family, that maybe I'd taken things a little personally, but they were willing to have a real conversation now. He used the phrase mutual expectations, which sounded like something he pulled out of a business book. I didn't call back. Let them talk. Let them panic. Let them feel what I've felt for years. The isolation, the pressure, the weight of being useful and disposable at the same time. And the best part? This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was still me being reasonable. They didn't know how far I was willing to go, but they were about to find out. Here's part 3 of Miranda's story. They were trying to play it cool, but it was unraveling faster than they could patch it. Laura posted a story on Instagram, just a picture of her feet on a patio with the caption, "Some people show their true colors when it's inconvenient." It was vague enough for her friends, but I knew exactly who it was about. Scott posted a meme about fake family and tagged no one. Subtle, right? What none of them knew was I'd already taken it further. The same day I froze the accounts, I also logged into the utilities portal. I'd been paying the electric and water bill for my parents' house since 2022. They always said they'd pay me back when things stabilized. Guess what never stabilized? So I canceled the autopay, deleted the card on file, marked it as moving out. 2 days later, my mom texted me. Did something happen to the utility payments? I got a shut-off notice. I left it on red. It wasn't cruel, not really. I gave them years of my life. I paid bills while they traveled. I skipped dentist appointments while they redecorated. I sold my coin collection to help cover the tax bill Dad forgot to pay on time. And I never threw it in their faces. Never once made them feel small for needing help. But they made me feel small regularly. Like when Scott said I couldn't hold down a man. Or when Laura laughed at my shoes and asked if I was starting a minimalist phase, or when Dad said he was glad I didn't have my daughter full-time with the hours I work. That one stuck. So, no, I didn't feel bad when I got another message from Laura on Sunday asking if I had canceled her Hulu account. I had. Along with the shared Netflix. And the phone plan I was still paying for because she claimed the family bundle was a better deal. She said she was locked out of everything and it was childish. I replied, I agree. Then silence. By Monday, they started switching strategies. Guilt gave way to bargaining. Mom called and left a message saying she missed how things used to be. Said she didn't want money, just to talk. Then she asked if I'd consider restarting the card just for 1 month since their new payment method hadn't gone through yet. Scott texted me that same day. I know we've had issues, but this is overkill. Laura went quiet, but I saw she updated her LinkedIn with a job she didn't have, probably trying to get someone else to co-sign a new apartment. Good luck. I wasn't angry anymore. That was the strange part. It felt like cleaning, like taking out a pile of trash that had been rotting for years, one bag at a time until the air started to clear and the floor wasn't sticky anymore. I started cooking real food again, even bought new shoes, not expensive ones, just something that didn't squeak when I walked. It felt absurd to buy something for myself. I stood in the store holding the box for 20 minutes before I let myself go to the register. That's when I realized what this really was. It wasn't revenge. It was subtraction. And I wasn't done yet. By Thursday, I expected more noise. Maybe another guilt-laced voicemail. Maybe another weird Instagram story from Scott pretending he was unbothered. But what I got instead was something I never saw coming. Lara, in person, on my porch. She hadn't been to my place since my divorce. I knew it wasn't a social call. No one in this family ever shows up without a reason. She had sunglasses on like she didn't want to be recognized, and in her hand, a thick yellow envelope. She didn't ask to come in. She just sat down on the porch step and said she wasn't here to fight. Inside the envelope were paper scraps, not junk. Receipts, old bank slips, sticky notes scribbled, copies of checks I'd written over the years. Some of them I didn't even remember. Rent money, vet bills, a backdated $600 transfer labeled, "For the deposit, please, thank you." There were at least 12 different handwriting samples, most of them hers. She said she'd been cleaning out her apartment because she was planning to leave the state, maybe Colorado, or maybe back to Florida, where one of her old roommates still owed her a favor. Then she said something strange. "I think I messed everything up, not just with you, with everyone." She went quiet for a bit, looked like she wanted to cry, but couldn't decide if I'd care. Then she told me something that stopped me cold. "Remember that backdated one? $500 I gave her in 2021. The one she said was for rent so she wouldn't get evicted? She said part of it went to pay off a guy she was seeing, a married guy. He'd threatened to leak some photos she sent him. She said she'd been too embarrassed to admit it and thought she could fix it without dragging me in, but she couldn't. I sat there in the doorway, not sure what to say. Not because I didn't feel something, but because I couldn't tell if she was finally being honest or just switching tactics. Then she said she wasn't asking for money, just that she wanted me to know she was sorry and that she wouldn't bother me again. She left the envelope on the porch and walked back to her car. Didn't even look back. It should have felt like a turning point, like maybe this whole mess could still be untangled. But then came the next surprise. Scott tried to use my name. I got an email from a bank I didn't recognize asking to confirm a loan application. Said they needed verification of identity. When I called, they told me someone had applied for a personal loan using my information, but the email on the application was slightly off. Miranda 32 instead of 23, just enough to slide through. The guy at the bank said it was flagged because some of the documentation looked photocopied. I already knew what it was. An old W-2. Probably one I emailed Scott back when he needed to show proof of employment for some dumb startup he never followed through on. That broke something in me I didn't even know was still intact. I filed the fraud report, locked every account, changed every password. And for the first time, I made sure his name was flagged in every single financial database I could access. It felt surgical, cold, precise, and long overdue. Then I made a quick call to his old landlord. I didn't lie, I just told the truth. Said Scott had left damage behind at his last place. Told her he used someone else's info to secure his new lease. She sounded exhausted but grateful. Said he'd already missed the first utility setup deadline. She said I knew he was all talk. And I said we all did, just took me longer. But none of that compared to what happened the next day. An unknown number from Mexico popped up on my phone. I almost ignored it. It was the school nurse at my daughter's school in Merida. She said my daughter listed me as a backup contact and that they hadn't been able to reach her father in over 48 hours. My ex had apparently left town with his new girlfriend and left our daughter with a neighbor, who then left for work and hadn't returned either. I froze. Couldn't even form a sentence for a few seconds. The nurse said, "We didn't want to scare you, but it's not a good situation. I think you should come." I packed a duffel bag and drove straight to the airport. Bought the first seat I could find to Mexico City, then connected to Merida. I didn't text anyone. I didn't tell work. I just left. Halfway through the layover, I got a message from Scott. "You're seriously going to ghost your whole family over money?" I didn't answer. Then, Mom said, "What's happening to this family?" This time I typed out a reply, then deleted it. I had bigger things to worry about. My daughter was alone in a country I had no legal custody rights in, and no one, not one of them, had ever asked how she was doing. And in that moment, All the anger I'd been carrying started to shape into something different. Something sharper. I wasn't finished. I was just switching targets. I landed in Merida just after midnight. The airport was quiet. Just a few taxis and some locals waiting for relatives. I didn't have any bags to check. Didn't even bring a change of clothes. Just my passport, a backpack, and one goal: get to my daughter. The nurse had given me the address of the neighbor who had been watching her. It was on the outskirts of town in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. I paid a cab driver extra to wait while I knocked. She was asleep when I got there, curled up on a couch in a house that smelled like dust and fried oil. The neighbor was some guy in his 50s who barely spoke English. He looked just as confused as I felt. He said her father had gone to Cancun for a few days with a friend, then stopped answering his phone. I thanked him, scooped up my daughter, and took her straight to a hotel. She didn't even ask why I was there. Just wrapped her arms around me and whispered that she missed me. I told her the same. We stayed there for 4 days, just the two of us. I took her to the beach one morning. We ate mangoes and churros, walked through markets, watched cartoons in Spanish. It was the first time I'd felt like a mom in over 3 years. My ex finally texted on the 5th day. "Everything okay?" That was it. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked into the local lawyer's office the nurse had recommended and asked what I could do to get some form of custody, or at least file for neglect. I knew the odds were stacked against me, but I had to try. Back in the States, things were falling apart. Scott's new lease had been revoked. The leasing company called to ask if I wanted to pursue fraud charges. I told them I was considering it. Lara posted a selfie with a caption: "Some people will never love you if they can't use you." Pretty sure she thought it was poetic. Mom sent a long message. She said I was turning into someone they didn't recognize, that I was acting out of character and letting bitterness poison the family. She said they were all willing to forgive me if I just stopped being so cruel. I stared at the message for 10 minutes. Then I replied, "I forgave all of you 100 times. You just called it responsibility." I turned off my phone. When I flew back to the US, I had one plan: clean break. I canceled everything still in my name, even the $4.99 subscription to some dumb cloud service Mom used for storing recipes. I called the phone company and split Lara off the family plan. I deleted every shared Google Drive folder, even the one with Dad's tax documents. Let him figure it out. Scott showed up at my job the next week. He walked into the warehouse like we were cool. He had sunglasses on, even though it was cloudy. He tried to pull me aside, said he wanted to talk woman to man. He said, "I know you're upset, but you've made your point enough, right?" I told him I wasn't done, not even close. He called me a coward, said I was ruining things for no reason, that I was petty and vindictive. Then I said something I didn't plan, something that came out sharp and final. "You were never family, you were just an expense." That shut him up. He stood there for a second, then walked out, didn't even look back. Later that night, Mom called again. Voicemail. She said she didn't know what to do anymore, that the family was falling apart, that I was scaring her with how cold I'd become. She said, "I don't even know who you are anymore." And for the first time in my life, I felt something like peace, because I finally knew who I was, and it wasn't their wallet. A month passed. Silence had become the norm. My phone stayed quiet. No more texts from Mom, no passive-aggressive Instagram stories from Lara, no fake apologies from Scott. The group chat had gone dead. It was the most peace I'd had in years. I got approved for visitation rights in Mexico. It wasn't full custody, not even close, but it was something. My daughter could visit for holidays. I already started fixing up the spare room in my place. Pulled the old stuff out, painted it yellow. I bought her a desk, the first real piece of furniture I'd bought in years. I still wore the same jeans, still drove the same truck, but everything felt different. Then, right as I thought the dust had settled, they pulled one last stunt. It was Lara's idea, I'm sure. I got a message from her out of nowhere. Said they wanted to meet as a family one last time. No drama, just to clear the air. I ignored it. 3 days later, Mom sent an actual letter, not an email. An envelope with her handwriting on the front, like it was 1998 again. Inside was a photo of us from 10 years ago, all smiling at some beach rental. A note said, "Before all this, please let's talk." I stared at it for a while. Then I drove over. I didn't tell them I was coming, just showed up. They were all there. Mom, Dad, Lara, Scott. It looked like they'd rehearsed what to say. Like they'd decided if they could just get me in a room, they could rewrite it all. Scott was the first to speak, tried humor. "So, the prodigal wallet returns." I didn't smile. Mom said they understood now that things had gone too far, that I needed space, but we were still blood. That should mean something. I waited. I let them talk. Let them lay out every excuse, every revision of history. Then I told them exactly how I saw it. I told Mom she never protected me from Dad's passive aggression, and that I wasn't her retirement plan. I told Lara she used people like furniture and expected applause for doing the bare minimum. I told Scott he was a leech, and not even a smart one. Then I said something that I regretted as soon as it left my mouth, but I said it anyway. You're not my family. You're just people I grew up with. The room went still. Mom looked like she'd been slapped. Lara stood up. Scott muttered something about me being mentally unstable. I stood there a second longer, then walked out. No goodbye, no second chances. On the way home, I felt it hit, that hollow guilt. I replayed every word. Thought about calling Mom back, softening the blow, maybe offering some half apology. But I didn't. Because this time the silence wasn't about abandonment. It was about freedom. They weren't going to change. And I wasn't going back. 3 days later, I blocked them all. Not out of hate. Out of necessity. I chose my daughter. I chose myself. I chose a future without chains made from guilt and obligation. And for the first time in years, I could finally breathe all the way in. Update. 2 weeks after I blocked them, I got a letter. Certified mail. No return address. Just my name in tight cursive on the envelope. For a second, I thought it might be legal trouble. Maybe Scott trying something stupid again. I almost didn't open it. Inside was a check. $300. No explanation beyond a short note written on a torn page from a notepad. Sold the couch. Sold the necklaces. I figured this covers some of what I owe. Don't expect more. I'm not trying to fix things. I just don't want a debt hanging over me. It wasn't signed. But it was Lara. I recognized the handwriting. And the tone. Classic her. I didn't catch it right away. It sat on my kitchen counter for 4 days. I'd glance at it while making coffee, walk past it on my way to bed, consider tearing it in half. Part of me wondered if it was bait. Part of me wondered if it was real. But mostly I was surprised. Lara never returned anything. Not books, not favors, not borrowed clothes, not borrowed money. And now here she was, selling her stuff just to balance a scale she once insisted didn't exist. I deposited it on the 5th day. Not because I needed the money. Because I wanted to see how it felt to take something back. Something I never thought I'd get.